Imagine standing at the edge of a coastline you have known your entire life. The waves are gone. The horizon has collapsed inward. Where there was once an endless surface of water, there is now only distance, vast, exposed, and silent. The ocean has disappeared. Not partially, not temporarily, but completely. Every sea, every basin, every trench, emptied. What remains is not just the bottom of the ocean. It is a hidden world, revealed all at once. This is not a fantasy. It is a thought experiment grounded in science. Step by step, we descend into what was once covered by water, moving from the familiar edges of continents down into the deepest structures of the planet. And as we walk, the Earth begins to look very different. At first, the transformation seems subtle. The coastlines expand outward, stretching far beyond their current limits. What we once called beaches become cliffs overlooking immense plains. These are the continental shelves, broad, gently sloping regions that were once submerged under relatively shallow water. Here the terrain is smooth, shaped by sediments carried over millions of years from rivers and erosion on land. But even in this first stage, something becomes clear. The continents are not isolated masses. They are connected by these submerged extensions. The boundaries we recognize on maps begin to dissolve. In their place, a continuous landscape emerges, revealing that the division between ocean and continent was never as absolute as it seemed. As we move farther out, the ground begins to change. The flat shelves give way to steep descents, the continental slopes. Here, the terrain drops sharply into darkness. Under normal conditions, sunlight would not reach these depths. But now, exposed to air, the features become visible. Massive underwater canyons cut through the slopes, some larger than any valley found on land. These were carved not by rivers flowing in open air, but by dense currents of sediment moving beneath the ocean surface. We continue downward. The pressure that once existed here is gone. The crushing weight of kilometers of water has vanished, and with it, an entire environment. What remains is the abyssal plain. It stretches for thousands of kilometers, broken only by occasional ridges and isolated volcanic peaks. But this plain is not empty. It is layered with history. Sediments accumulated slowly, year after year, carrying microscopic remains of marine organisms, particles from distant continents, and traces of volcanic activity. Without water to conceal it, the surface becomes a record, a timeline written in layers of fine material. Each centimeter represents centuries. Each region tells a different story. And then, rising from this quiet expanse, something unexpected appears. Mountain ranges. Not small elevations, but enormous structures. Long chains that extend across entire ocean basins. These are mid-ocean ridges, formed by tectonic activity deep within the Earth. Here, the planet is still creating itself. Magma rises from below, cools, and forms new crust. In the presence of water, this process is hidden, but now, exposed, it becomes visible as a continuous scar across the planet. These ridges are not static, they are active. And along them, we encounter one of the most extraordinary environments ever discovered: hydrothermal vent fields. In the ocean, these appear as black smokers, releasing mineral-rich fluids into the water. Without the ocean, their structure becomes clear. Chimney-like formations rise from the ground. Built from minerals that precipitated as superheated fluids met cold seawater. Now, without that water, the system changes, but the structures remain. These vents were not just geological features. They were ecosystems. Entire communities of life existed here, independent of sunlight. Instead of photosynthesis, they relied on chemical energy, chemosynthesis. Bacteria converted minerals into energy, forming the base of a food chain unlike anything on land. With the ocean gone, these systems collapse. And this reveals something fundamental. The ocean is not just a cover. It is a condition for life. We continue our descent. The terrain becomes more extreme. The crust fractures, bends, and sinks. And eventually, we arrive at the deepest structures on Earth, the ocean trenches. Among them, one stands out: the Mariana Trench. It is often described as a hole, but that description is misleading. What we see is not a simple depression, but a complex system formed by tectonic forces. One plate is being pushed beneath another in a process known as subduction. Over millions of years, this movement has created a deep, elongated valley, steep, narrow, and incredibly deep. Standing at its edge, the scale becomes difficult to comprehend. Without water, the trench would appear as a vast chasm cutting into the Earth's crust. Its walls would descend sharply, leading into depths that reach nearly 11 kilometers below sea level. It reveals the dynamic nature of the planet. As we move across this exposed world, another layer of history emerges. Scattered across the seabed are objects that once belonged to human activity. Shipwrecks, aircraft, lost cargo, remnants of centuries of exploration, trade, and conflict. Some areas reveal clusters of wreckage, marking dangerous routes or historical events. Others show isolated remains, preserved in conditions that slowed decay. But not everything we find is as mysterious as it first appears. Many stories surrounding the ocean floor, lost cities, unexplained structures, do not withstand scientific examination. When analyzed carefully, most can be explained through natural processes. Data separates reality from speculation. And among the most important structures revealed are the vast networks of undersea communication cables. These cables carry the majority of global internet traffic. Stretching across ocean basins, they connect continents. Without water, they would form a visible web across the planet, thin lines tracing the flow of information between nations. It is a reminder that even in the deepest parts of the ocean, human presence exists, not as cities, but as connections. As we continue, the ground beneath us begins to reveal something else: resources. Nodules rich in manganese lie scattered across the seabed. Deposits of metals, rare earth elements, and gas hydrates exist beneath layers of sediment. These materials represent potential sources of energy and industry. But with this potential comes risk. Without the ocean, we would also see the consequences of human activity more clearly. Areas contaminated by waste, traces of oil spills, microplastics. Exposure would make their presence undeniable. And then, we reach the final realization. Removing the ocean does not simply reveal the Earth. It transforms it. The moment the oceans disappear, the balance of the entire planet begins to collapse. Water is not just something that fills space. It regulates everything. Without the oceans, the global climate system changes almost immediately. The vast currents that once moved heat around the planet cease to exist. Thermal energy distribution is gone. Continents that were once moderated by nearby seas experience extreme fluctuations. Coastal climates vanish. Days grow hotter. Nights become colder. Seasonal contrasts intensify. Regions depend on ocean currents freeze or overheat. Wind patterns shift. The atmosphere begins to behave differently. And then, something even more fundamental starts to break down: the water cycle. With no oceans, evaporation drops dramatically. Rainfall decreases. Rivers shrink and disappear. Soil dries out. Vegetation struggles. The land loses its ability to support life. Forests recede. Grasslands turn into dust. Deserts expand rapidly. Oxygen is produced by organisms in the ocean, phytoplankton. Without the ocean, their populations collapse entirely. Oxygen levels decline steadily. As marine life disappears, the impact extends outward. Fish vanish. Coral reefs die. Entire ecosystems are erased in a geological instant. The interconnected web of life is broken. What remains on land is dependent on this loss. Even the geological structure begins to respond. The immense weight of the oceans, trillions of tons, has been pressing down. When that weight is suddenly removed, the crust begins to rebound. Land rises in response. This process is isostatic rebound. Former seabeds begin to lift. Fault lines experience new stress distributions. Volcanic activity may increase as pressure conditions change. The Earth is not static. It reacts to the removal of such a massive force. Time. Erosion begins to act differently. Wind becomes the dominant force. carving exposed seabeds, redistributing sediments, and reshaping the terrain. Features that once formed slowly underwater change more rapidly in open air. The exposed ocean floor evolves, but the striking realization is human. Without oceans, the structure of civilization changes. Trade routes vanish. Ports become meaningless. Fisheries collapse instantly. Coastal cities are left stranded far from water. Transportation must be reimagined. Resources must find new paths. And yet, something else becomes visible: connection. Without oceans dividing continents, vast new land corridors appear. Regions once separated are now linked. Migration becomes possible. The geography shifts from separation to connection. Connection comes at a cost. Because the ocean was never just a barrier, it was a stabilizer, a regulator, a system that balanced energy, moisture, and life itself. Draining the oceans does not simply reveal landscapes, it removes one of the most essential components of Earth's system. What we gain in visibility, we lose in stability. The mountains, trenches, ridges, and plains are real, but they are not meant to stand alone. They are part of a larger system: water, atmosphere, life, and time. When that system is broken, the planet becomes fragile. So when we imagine a world without oceans, what we are really uncovering is not just the hidden face of the Earth. We are uncovering the role the ocean plays in making that face livable. Because the greatest discovery is not what lies beneath the water, it is what the water itself makes possible.